we doing today, boys and girls? It's IronWings3187 coming at you with another review. Today we will be discussing what is probably one of the most controversial rifles that I own in my collection for me. One of the most hard to like rifles that I own. The Rock Island M14Y youth model. So, this is a standard bolt-action 22 long rifle made by Rock Island Arms Corps out of the Philippines, and it's based on a English or New Zealand design by Birmingham and Stratton, something like that. I can't remember the name of the company, but it's basically Arms Corps bought the rights to import this into the United States, and it is, well, it's a rifle. Let's put it like that. It is a 22 bolt action, like I said. Very simple, about as simple as you can get for a 22, which is kind of the trademark of Rock Island outside their 1911 line. And pull the trigger, and it releases the bolt. You can see that the bolt is very simple mechanically. Really, it's just kind of a spring firing pin inside of a tube. And that kind of describes this rifle. It's mostly, I don't know how to call it. It is an extremely budget-minded rifle. Feeds from a detachable 10-round magazine. You can get 15-rounders for it, and even 20-rounders I've seen on the Arms Corps' website. So, why is this kind of a debatable or hard-to-love rifle in my collection? Well, for one, it is very neat because it does come factory with a threaded muzzle, which, for a $200 rifle, you're going to be spending more on the paperwork to get a suppressor or a muzzle device for this rifle. And realistically, for a $200 22, you'd be better off doing like a fully integrally suppressed 1022 than doing this. But at the same time, because this is a bolt-action 22, you can single feed things like a CCI Calibri CB, or not an Aguila Calibri, a CCI CB, or a Aguila subsonic sniper round. And if you put a suppressor on this, it would be somewhat reliable single feeding versus a Ruger 1022 or Marlin Model 60, where you're going to have to pay to get the barrel threaded. It is going to come unable to run those types of ammunition from the factory, even single feed, because most of the time they won't fully extract. They'll either jam the rifle up, or you'll have to manually extract them from the chamber because it won't run the bolt back. So, the reason I dislike this rifle is kind of because I have issues with zeroing it. The quality control on it is okay. It's passable. I've had 3 of these rifles, 2 of which got returned to the gun shop because one of them, no matter how much I zeroed this scope on it, would always throw the bullets high and to the right, even at 50 yards. No matter how many times I re-zeroed it, worked on it, whatever, it would always wind up re-throwing the rounds and never hold 0. The second rifle I got, well, I should say the reason why the first one kept throwing lead and throwing rounds to the right is because there was a bit of damage to the crown of the muzzle. The other one I returned because it would not run any ammunition at all. It would get about 2 to 3 rounds out of the magazine, and then you would have a round get stuck in the chamber. So that got returned to the gun shop, and that got returned to Arms Corps by the gun owner, or gun shop owner. They traded me this rifle, which has run reliably, but the accuracy is still suffering. I mean, it's nothing special. The best accuracy I've been able to get out of it is about a baseball-sized group at 100 yards, but given with other 22 rifles, I've been able to get something similar to, I want to say, a silver dollar for group size with my Model 60 and the right scope on it. And this does suffer from the same issue where it won't hold 0 for some reason. And mind, I'm not using like a cheapy Simmons scope. I'm using a Hawk 3x9x50 rifle scope that's meant to take the brunt of rifle rounds like 30-06. So this rifle with this scope that costs almost $200 and rings that cost me, I want to say, $40 for two rings. This rifle shouldn't have any excuse for throwing rounds at 100 yards. And I mean, granted, it's not a match-grade rifle. This is not something that's meant to print sub-MOA groups at 100 yards with 22 long rifle, especially regular velocity. But when I'm using extreme hyper-velocity 22 ammo from Aguila or Federal Punch ammo at 100 yards, and I'm still at best getting baseball-sized groups with this scope, I don't know. I can't really describe what kind of puts me off of this rifle. It was something I was really hyped up about, something I really liked when I first got it, but as time's gone on, I've owned this for a year. I've put probably close to 10,000 rounds of 22 ammunition through it. Well, actually, it's been almost 2 years now that I've owned it. And out of all that ammo, it's not the best 22 I own. And I mean, granted, it's a budget rifle, but given I got my Marlin Model 60, which is far more reliable on the first try. I only had to buy one of those and I didn't have to return it. It's more accurate and it holds zero if I put this scope on it. I don't know. Can I recommend you buy this rifle? Yes, for a youth shooter, and one thing I will give this rifle credit for is when you do shoot it, you'll hear that trigger is heavy, almost 8 to 10 pounds, but it is crisp. There's hardly any take-up. There's hardly any mush to it. It is extremely crisp and just snaps like glass. So, would I recommend you go out and buy one of these? Honestly, I can't really say. And I know this kind of gets tiresome where I have to sit there and say, well, maybe if you like this, maybe you like that, but realistically, this is just kind of hard for me to quantify because what I'm put off by personally, where it has quality control issues, I've had to buy 3 of these things or return 2 of them to get to this one that's reliable and somewhat accurate. And the fact that it just won't hold zero with a scope for me kind of puts me off of it, but it may not put you off of it because you might have a kid or you might want a rifle that comes ready to host a suppressor and can use subsonic ammunitions. Granted, they won't be accurate out of this because even Rock Island strictly says only shoot hypervelocity or high velocity ammunition out of this rifle. But would I recommend you buy this rifle? I can't decide that just because to me there's a lot that puts me off of it, between the accuracy, the quality control issues, even the magazine. These magazines cost $20 a pop for what amounts to basically a $5 stamping of steel spot welded with a spring in it. You can't even disassemble these things because the plastic is integrally sealed by that weld and kept in place. So, for the price you're paying, you're not really going to get disappointed, especially if you're just using it to kind of pop crows within 25 yards of your cornfield or your backyard, or you're taking your kid out to go and pop soda cans at 25 yards. But otherwise, don't expect anything glorious out of this rifle. It's not supremely accurate out to 50 or even 100 yards. It's not extremely reliable because of the quality control issues I've had with Arms Corps. And don't expect to host a scope on it because I think the best you can do is just keep the iron sights on this sucker. So, without anything else to say, really, buy one of these at your own risk. It's not an awful, atrocious rifle. I've had much worse, especially considering I made a rant that was almost as long as this video on the BL-22 alone. But I can't in good conscience recommend you buy this and give it a great rating or a great review. It's passable at best, it's serviceable, it'll get the job done, especially if you're just a farmer looking for a new Crow gun to replace your old Model 60 or like your gallery gun that your grandfather or your great-grandfather bought. Other than that, I just kind of steer clear because you've got something like the Rossi pump-action 22s, or hell, even you can go in and buy a Marlin Model 60 for $50 or $100 at most pawn shops in America. used, but they're more reliable and more accurate than this rifle. So, with that, this has been Iron Wings 3187, signing off.